Hello, everybody, and welcome back to VGR, where we are bringing you comprehensive coverage of all the games announced at the Bethesda E3 conference. We covered Microsoft in a previous video, and here we are covering the Skyrim Fallout Giants. Here with me today is Matt Morgan. Say hello, Matt.
Hello.
All right, and we will be jumping into it as we previously did with the Microsoft conference, covering the general conference, the games announced, as well as our individual top three from the conference. First of all, let's get it out of the way. It's Fallout 76.
Yes, Bethesda Game Studios was relatively quiet this E3, which we kind of knew ahead of schedule was going to be the case. They announced that neither The Elder Scrolls 6 nor Starfield were going to be at E3 this year, which is unfortunate, and it did mean that Bethesda Game Studios, the kind of core Bethesda studio, didn't have a whole lot to show. But what we did get was a lot of interesting information from the other studios owned by ZeniMax Media. But we'll get to those in due course. So yeah, to start off with Fallout 76, we got a first look at the two new upcoming DLCs, Nuclear Winter and Wastelanders, which are both coming out later this year. Nuclear Winter is actually... it's not available just yet. I think they're doing an event where people can do like an early trial for a little while, and then I think it's coming back in a month or so's time. Whereas Wastelanders will be later this year.
Interesting. And what can we expect to see in those DLCs, in those expansions?
Well, Nuclear Winter, they've announced is basically going to be a Fallout 76 Battle Royale mode.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Enticing.
Well,
you can tell I'm excited.
Yes, I don't want to jump to conclusions about Nuclear Winter. Maybe there is a coterie of Fallout 76 gamers who are hankering for a Fallout 76 Battle Royale mode. I can't say I've heard much from them, if they do exist. But to be fair to Fallout 76, it's definitely the case that there's a lot of people on the bandwagon of hating Fallout 76 who haven't played the game since a week after it launched. And actually, Bethesda, the game had a lot of faults when it launched, and Bethesda has done a reasonable job of fixing a lot of them. The game's not nearly as bug-ridden as it was when it launched. They have addressed most of the economy problems, if not all of them. And while Appalachia, the first DLC phase, did add a lot of pretty interesting new content, Nuclear Winter, we've probably only seen a bit of it. Wild Appalachia was a DLC release phase that lasted 2-3 months, something like that. Nuclear Winter and Wastelanders will be the same. So the Battle Royale is probably just the headline feature of the Nuclear Winter phase. There's probably going to be more content tucked in along with that, with new events and so on. The actual Battle Royale mode on its own does seem to be doing some interesting things that other Battle Royales are not known for. For example, there are going to be enemies, just like AI enemies in the mode. Okay. And those are going to be kind of up to some pretty impressive enemies. They've shown footage now of Scorch Beasts being in the Battle Royale. That's a pretty hefty enemy to have in a Battle Royale. And they're also going to be nukes of some sort. And again, that's a pretty massive weapon to have in a Battle Royale.
No small thing.
So a lot of unanswered questions still about how exactly it's going to work, but it does look like they're at least putting their own spin on it. Otherwise, it looks, fairly like what you'd expect from a Battle Royale mode.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with Fallout, it seems like they're trying really hard to not only revive what went wrong with the game, revive the game in a new light, but also kind of fulfill the wants and wishes of players who have stuck with it and kind of give them what they want.
Well, actually, for the next, I think it's the next week or just over a week, the game is actually free to play.
Oh, nice.
Just as like for people who have maybe been out of the game for a while, or if they've never played the game because they were put off by all the terrible press it got on release.
That's smart.
This might be a good time to try it out again, because
Absolutely.
It definitely has changed quite a bit since its release.
That's really smart.
And there's also a ton more content than there was in release. The first Wild Appalachia added a lot. The other trailer that we got is for Wastelanders. So if Battle Royale isn't your thing, what you might be looking for is what's coming to the game with Wastelanders, because it is going to bring back NPCs, which was
nice.
a huge thing that was missing from Fallout 76 when it launched. And Bethesda had their reasons for not including NPCs, but I think this is a clear example of them hearing what fans want, and they've realised maybe it wasn't the best decision to not have NPCs in the game.
Just a bit in a Fallout game.
So yeah, NPCs will be coming back. We've seen now evidence in the trailer that there will be dialogue choices, very much reminiscent of what was in Fallout 4 and games like that. The DLC is going to add in a whole new main story. It's going to add in what looks like maybe NPC factions and things like that. Certainly that's what I'd expect for them to bring back NPCs, is to bring back actual factions.
Yeah.
The factions that do exist at the moment in Fallout 76 are fairly sort of limited, because they're either just controlled by a robot, or they're just sort of there, like they sort of exist in the canon, but there's not really a faction. It's like you're the only actual member. And then you're just following recordings.
Oh, fun. Well, as the kind of the whole of the game has been up until this point, I'm just looking forward to seeing how the fans of the game react, because I never picked up 76, and I was obviously never a core fan of it, but there is a dedicated fan base, so I'm interested to see how they react to these coming changes.
I think Wastelanders is going to be a very positive change for the game, and I think it also gives them a lot of potential to build on with future content going into next year. They're going to have to sustain this game until they're ready to release Starfield, and I think estimates, I don't think that game's coming out before 2021.
Certainly not.
So they're going to need to sustain it through 2020. And having human NPCs gives them a lot more potential to work with, at least for sort of adding new content. But we'll have to see where that kind of goes in 2020.
Yeah, definitely. The future of the game is open. It's up to them to really take advantage of it.
Certainly, I think they are starting to listen to fans. Certainly with the changes that they've made to various items in the game, the bug fixes that they've made, and just in communicating with the community, I think they've been fairly good over the last few months. And I think Wastelanders is a big indication that they're listening. And that's what makes me think that Nuclear Winter might honestly be the result of a group of fans who are not particularly vocal on social media actively requesting this thing, maybe on Bethesda's direct forums or something like that. It's definitely the case that there's a lot of voices surrounding Fallout 76 on social media who are not necessarily representative of the game's core player base.
Yeah, and like I said, the core player base is really who they're trying to cater to right now. So hopefully they can keep this game going through 2020, as you said. Another couple games, another couple announcements released in the Bethesda presser. Rage 2 is going to receive the Rise of the Ghost DLC. We haven't heard much about who the ghosts are. They look like some creepy variation of the Blue Man Group. Some sort of weird occult stuff going on with them. Elder Scrolls Blades is coming to Switch. It will still be free to play, which is going to be really interesting to see, and a really unexpected announcement as far as I'm concerned, but a welcome one, because I feel like it's a cool addition to Switch. And we got
for sure.
We got some new stuff regarding Elder Scrolls Online, as expected. We just got a new Elsewhere trailer featuring dragons and necromancers and the Khajiit.
It was definitely a big opportunity to promote Elsewhere, so that's why they had this big cinematic trailer. The expansion has actually already released. It came out on the 4th of June. so it's available if people want to go straight to it. But I don't think Bethesda was going to pass up the opportunity to promote it more widely at E3.
No, of course not. And it's been there the last few years, so why not now? But Matt, let's just jump right into our top three. And let's start with your number 3. What was your third most highlighted reveal at the Bethesda presser?
My third was the reveal of, or not the reveal of, but the new trailer for Wolfenstein Youngblood.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a bit of this, in terms of trailers before, but we got a bit more of a detailed look with gameplay trailers this time around. Certainly, I'm a big fan of the Wolfenstein reboot. And what they've done, is they have a really unique setting, a real focus on character and story, and a really well-developed single-player campaign, which is now going to be a 2-player co-op campaign. It's a development, I think, which is going to be really popular.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have wanted a chance to take the Wolfenstein game kind of design and bring it into some kind of multiplayer environment.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to get that chance.
Absolutely. I mean, killing Nazis lends itself perfectly to a friendly activity. To sit on the couch and do with a buddy or chat online. It's a really great bonding experience for everyone involved. So certainly a lot to look forward to in that, and it's also a continuation of the story, as you'll be playing as B.J. Blazkowicz's daughters, his twin daughters, which is a pretty cool little leap forward in the continuation of Wolfenstein. My number 3 is Doom Eternal, and not necessarily because I'm a huge Doom fan, but more so because I'm interested to see where they go with the next title. I mean, Doom 2016 did a lot of really cool things to revive the franchise, but certainly I think they have to do a lot more to up the ante, because if they just give us more of the same, only 4 years later, what do fans really have to get excited about? I mean, granted, it was a cool game. More of the same wouldn't be bad, but I think in order to prove the longevity of this newly rejuvenated franchise, we're going to need to see more from Doom. Certainly we saw that we will be going to both Heaven and Hell, which is an interesting development. We'll be getting a 2-on-1 Demons versus Doomslayer mode, and we've got a November 22nd release date of this year, but we've really got to see how this franchise continues its longevity, and if it will after Doom Eternal. So that's what's captivated me the most about Doom Eternal. And Matt, your second most highlighted reveal at the Bethesda presser.
Well, our second and firsts here are a little bit mismatched. So what I define as my number 2 is the reveal of Deathloop.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a really fascinating game. We haven't heard a whole lot about this. It's coming from the developers of Dishonored, and again, it's a developer that we haven't heard from in a little while.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks like a really interesting idea. But this was a cinematic trailer, so we don't know a whole lot about what this game is actually going to be like and what it's going to play like.
Yeah, it's based kind of on premise right now.
Yeah, I mean, just on premise, it looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The trailer had a real sort of like 70s, 80s, James Bond kind of style to it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, especially the whole plot featuring the dueling assassins, sort of caught in this eternal time loop where they're just basically doomed to kill each other over and over and over again, and they're aware of what is occurring in this time loop and what has occurred in past loops, and they, as evidenced in the trailer, learn from these mistakes and then find more efficient ways to kill each other. But the dudes over at Arcane seemed really excited about this, and I think it's a cool concept. Again, like you said, we haven't received gameplay footage. It's all about the concept, and I think the idea of two dueling protagonists with two very different motives inside this loop, one who's trying to find a way to escape it, one who's kind of found a way to embrace this endless cycle of violence, I think it's going to add a really interesting dichotomy to the game that we really need to see from Arcane. Like you said, it's been a while since we've seen something from them, so I'm really interested.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued as to how it's actually going to play out in practice, because it sort of seemed like the two dueling assassins were both going to be protagonists with different mindsets.
Yeah, that's kind of how they presented it.
So I don't know if this is going to be like Dishonored 2, where you had the two different protagonists and you picked to play one at the start of the game, and then you play through the game and the game is otherwise fairly similar, or whether maybe you pick one and the other one becomes the main villain.
Yeah.
Which would be a really interesting way to play it. So yeah, I have a lot of unanswered questions about Deathloop.
Yeah, and I hope we'll get some answers to those questions, because I am itching to get more information about this one.
Yeah, well, actually, you had this as your number one, and this is where it gets a bit twisted, because Deathloop's my number 2, your number 1, and your number 2 is my number 1.
Yes, and my number 2 is Ghostwire Tokyo, which looks really cool. I haven't played a lot of. I never really played Evil Within, but I know the kind of the legacy that game has and the cult following that it has. And of course, I absolutely fell for the charm of Ikumi Nakamura, who is just such a genuine, lovable, and overall adorable presenter. She clearly had such passion behind directing Ghostwire Tokyo, and told us enough to get me really interested. But since it's your number one, why don't you go ahead and extrapolate on it a little bit?
Yeah, so again, this is a totally new game coming from Tango Gameworks. So all we got this time around was just a cinematic trailer, just like Deathloop. So we didn't really get an indication of when this game's going to come out. Hopefully next year sometime. Hopefully we won't have to wait too long. But yes, it's coming
crossed.
from the studio that made The Evil Within and The Evil Within 2. But of course, this is also the studio founded by the original director of Resident Evil. So there's a pretty significant pedigree behind this game.
Yeah.
And as you say, the actual director of this game comes from a background that's mixed with things like Okami and Bayonetta, and there's a whole lot of really individual kind of titles going into this. So yeah, the cinematic trailer was really, I think, one of the standout announcements of E3 overall.
Definitely.
For me, it might be my number one announcement of the entire E3. It has a really distinct aesthetic to it that really seems to be playing on a sort of unique take on Japanese folklore and the paranormal. Lots of very weird scenes, and a lot of unanswered questions from the trailer. But I think that really ties in very nicely with that sort of paranormal weirdness.
Yeah, what I like especially about Ghostwire Tokyo is that where Evil Within had a distinctly Western spin, Ghostwire Tokyo leans heavily into those Japanese influences.
Definitely. Right
down to the setting, obviously taking place in Tokyo. And like you said, dealing with things like Oni and yokai and things. Really, the Japanese aspect of the supernatural. It's not necessarily a horror game, but it is an action game with spooky
they've
elements.
described it as an action-adventure game. So it's presumably going to be a bit less horror-oriented than The Evil Within. But we still don't really know what the gameplay itself is going to be like. I mean, the studios that are owned by Bethesda tend to follow a fairly similar model. You know, Prey, Doom, Wolfenstein, they've all got fairly similar gameplay mechanics.
Yeah.
But The Evil Within was kind of the standout from that group.
Yeah.
In that it had a slightly different approach. So we don't know if they're going to be adopting something similar or if they're going to be taking their own sort of approach to things.
I would think that they know how to give Tango a lot of leeway, especially seeing what they can do with titles like Evil Within, and given the prowess and pedigree of the names behind the game. I think that they know to give Tango their space and that they will develop something awesome and something really worth playing. But for now, I'm absolutely captivated by it. I mean, it was a close second to Deathloop, which I found to be only slightly more intriguing, if only from the fact that I really like Dishonored. I'm excited to see what comes out of Arcane.
Yeah. I think the only reason I'm putting Ghostwire ahead of Deathloop on my own ranking is just that I think the Deathloop trailer gave less of an impression as to what the game actually is going to be.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, it was a really interesting portrayal of two characters, but I don't think this is going to be the case. But based on that trailer, they could turn around and say, this is a battle royale game, and we were just making up two characters for a battle royale world.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be it, but the trailer was so vague about the gameplay mechanics that would literally fit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're certainly not wrong. And maybe I'm a sucker for really buying into
I don't think that would go down well if that was the case. And the fact that, these are named characters who clearly have motivations, I do think it's going to be a story-based game, along the lines of Dishonored, but the trailer was very vague. Whereas I felt like with Ghostwire Tokyo, they gave us a stronger sense of, not necessarily of the gameplay, but at least of the setting and like what you're actually going to be dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, I'm hyped as hell for both of those, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to come out of that. Bethesda overall had a pretty small presser. Some interesting little tidbits though for us to kind of dissect and chew on a little bit, let marinate in our minds while we wait for more reveals, hopefully later this year. But for now, that will do it for us. That has been our comprehensive coverage of the Bethesda conference and all the games announced, revealed, teased, shown there. Once again, I've been Jacob Smith.
And I'm Matt Morgans.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Stick around for our Ubisoft coverage.